down and out. The Homeland Security's Disinformation Board is now paused. The would-be Minister of Truth, Nina Jankowicz, handed in her resignation letter, which was obtained by the Associated Press. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre defending the board today. Listen.
The Department of Homeland Security, they began their statement repeating that the board had been intentionally mischaracterized, which is a little bit of what you were asking me, and they were explicit about what it does and does not do.
Joining me now, former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee. It was the Republicans' fault. False attacks were a significant distraction from the department's vitally important work to combat disinformation that threatens the safety and security of the American people. That's in the statement from the Department of Homeland Security, Governor.
Dagan, is there no one at the White House press room who can challenge that idiotic statement by the press secretary when she somehow blames Republicans and the right wing for this idiotic idea? And by the way, can I commend you on the funniest stinking thing I've heard in a long time, calling her Scary Poppins, not the press secretary, but Nina Jankowicz, the person who has been put on pause. And the only thing more disingenuous about the whole disillusion of this nutty idea is that they didn't have her come out and say that she's leaving and resigning because she wants to spend more time with her family, because that's the go-to statement that politicians make when they've got nothing else to say other than, I really goofed this up.
I have to give credit to the New York Post, not the Washington Post, but the New York Post, because they put Scary Poppins on the cover. Because again, I refuse to play that viral video of her singing that little ditty she came up with to the tune of Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. But on that note, so the Washington Post broke this story, and it was written by Taylor Lorenz, who has gotten into plenty of trouble for, again, crying about, oh, I'm the victim, when she is literally victimized private citizens in her own reporting previously for the New York Times, now the Washington Post. But here's what Taylor Lorenz writes about Nina Jankowicz. Get this. Jankowicz's experience is a prime example of how the right-wing internet apparatus operates, where far-right influencers attempt to identify a target, present a narrative, and then repeat mischaracterizations across social media and websites with the aim of discrediting and attacking anyone who seeks to challenge them. She referred to Nina Jankowicz as a victim, the victim of coordinated online attacks. As the administration struggled to respond, all the people, anybody on the internet did was look into Nina Jankowicz's background, where she was a fountain of disinformation herself, calling Hunter Biden's laptop a Trump campaign tool, pushing the debunked Steele dossier, and the White House didn't seem to have any idea of what she'd done in the past.
Well, it's a classic example, Dagan, of what are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes? I mean, we clearly can see what she said. We can read her Twitter account. We can see this nutty song she did. We can realize that she has repeatedly made statements that are utterly untrue, complete disinformation. You mentioned a couple of them. The Russia hoax that turned out to be absolutely nothing. The Hunter Biden laptop story, which she claimed was a Russian plant. Now even the New York Times and the Washington Post have to admit that it's real, that it really has happened that way. You can't make this stuff up, and it's just crazy to me that there aren't more people in the press who are recognizing that one of the dumbest ideas ever to come out of Washington, and there have been plenty of them, was this nonsense that the government ought to put together a board to filter people's speech and determine what we could or could not say. That's crazy.
Right. That's the point. Governor, how is it that no one working for Biden Incorporated had any concept that people would not be okay with this? That you call a disinformation board and then you send Mayorkas out, who again repeatedly has said that the southern border isn't open, and he went out on and was kind of as Dan Henninger wrote in the Wall Street Journal, Mayorkas was on Fox News wide-eyed with wonder at the controversy over the board and claimed that it was just about disinformation from Russia and China and Iran, when Jankowicz, in her work outside in the private sector, had defined disinformation as gendered and sexualized disinformation. How would they think that this wasn't even on the surface a violation of the First Amendment, potentially?
Dagan, you got to remember, these are people on the far left who don't think their armpits stink even after they've been out in the hot August sun working all week and never taking a shower. You've never seen anything like this in the history of politics. They absolutely are amazed that somebody would call them out for their own statements. It would be one thing if people made up stuff about them, but people are just simply running the tape, letting it happen. And they're saying, oh, no, you misunderstood me. No, we understood them completely, and that's what bothers us.
I will do you one better. The people working for Biden Incorporated have built up so much mistrust and distrust among the American people. They couldn't sell lemonade to them at a church picnic in Charleston, South Carolina in the middle of August.
I'm going to have to say that's equal to the task for sure, Dagan. You and I understand the Southern culture for sure.
Yes,
Lemonade will always work in Charleston.
I think we need a translator. We need subtitles when the two of us are on. You throw in John Kennedy and nobody knows what we're talking about. Governor Huckabee, always a pleasure, sir. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dagan.
Be well.